Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social Podcast. Today we are discussing the second round of the UCI Cyclocross World Cup held in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And with me here to do that are Twan.
Hello.
And Issam.
Hey everybody.
So first of all, instead of going straight into the men's race, I would like to have your guys' opinions on this parcours. A parcours specifically constructed for the World Championships later this year. Issam, what did you think about it?
Well, we talked about it in the preview a little bit that, that it was going to be a good parkour, and I was surprised by how good it was. There was a lot of things that I would like to see in Belgium races in a way, and it just shows that if you put a little bit of effort in a parkour, you can really get, a very good parkour out of it, and it was a lot of variation in a way, but also a little simple, but that made it also very good. So I really loved it. I enjoyed it.
Well, the little bit of effort is quite an understatement. That's the only comment I have. For the rest, I mainly agree. They had a budget of roughly 5 million euros. At least that's what Sven Nys said in an interview today. There's been quite some years of constructions going into this, so it's not a bit of effort. But I agree, it looked great. Tom, what did you think?
It looks like a very tough course, especially that climb looks like where you have to make the race, because the rest looks maybe a bit on the simple side. And especially today with it raining, it was really tough. I think if the level differences aren't that big on the hill especially, then it could become a bit of a peloton cross, which would be a bit disappointing for the World Championships, but today it looked amazing.
Yeah, I would agree on that. I think they did a good job in also decorating the course. They put some sand on these hills, so it looked kind of like a sand dune, except the riders didn't go through the sand. There will be some small changes to the parcours before the World Championships, and I think it adds a bit of everything actually from the great courses. You have this technical downhill, which looks kind of like Namur. You have this steep climb, which looked like something we saw in Valkenburg. We saw some longer straights like we saw in Bogense. Then we saw this steep ramp, which looked like some features we saw in Dubendorf, one of the few great features of that course there. That looked a bit like Rutherford at some points. So yeah, overall a very good course. It was also a very special day on the first day of racing here, but there was also a special event happening in the men's race, and Issam will tell us about that.
So yeah, it was a rainy day, and that made the parkour tough and a bit slippery as well. Van Torenhout, Hermans, Soet and Iserbyt had a very good start. We also saw the likes of Toon Aerts coming up to the front in a way, but at the first lap it was a bit conservative. It was really like getting the feeling of the parkour, knowing a little bit what you want to do, because nobody wanted to blow himself up. In the second lap it was a bit that Toon Aerts tried to go on the long climb, which would be a little bit the key moment in the race later on, going on in the race. So Toon Aerts went on that long climb, and there were the four best guys in a way in that race that stood up. Quinten Hermans was one of them, together with Iserbyt and Michael van Torenhout. And then in the third lap, we saw something very impressive from Quinten Hermans going on the long climb again. And he just blew the whole competition away. In a way, he got 20 seconds in one lap, and they would never see him back. They were nodding their heads because they knew that there was no way that they would come back. And kind of the winner of the race was there decided. But then, of course, there was still the fight for second and for third. And Van Torenhout made it very interesting with his chain dropping off. Luckily for him, he was close to the pit, so he could come back in a way. Toon Aerts tried to put Iserbyt under pressure, but then blew himself up. Iserbyt capitalized on that and made sure that he was in second place. And Van Torenhout, coming back from that chain drop, was able to overtake Toon Aerts and get third place. So in the end, both Paul Sauze riders are on the podium, but a very dominated win by Quinten Hermans.
Quinten Hermans taking his first victory here today in one of the three major classified crosses, so that are World Cup, Super Prestige, and the Trofee Veldrijden. So very special by him. Also the first win for Tormans in any of these classifications. Twan, what did you think when you saw Hermans beasting like that today?
It's crazy, right? Because we see him ride very good first and second laps quite often. So I was very hesitant, but it just kept looking better and better, and then it's just a very beautiful moment, I think, for cyclocross, a very beautiful moment for Quinten Hermans, because it's another rider that is a serious contender for victories, and that is just amazing to see. What he did today was absolutely amazing, and it's very nice to see someone who has entertained me personally as a fan a lot. To see him finally get that win, it's really beautiful.
I also think it's very well deserved. Of course, he had that very tough season last year. He broke his collarbone in the Dauphiné there and basically struggled the entire cyclocross season because of that. It was really sad to see. He also had like struggle adjusting to the reality in the beginning of the season that he couldn't ride like he used to. Ultimately, he got that win in Sydney class at the end of the season. He was very emotional about that, and I get it. And I think he would be very emotional about his win today as well, because he really deserved it. And like last weekend we were in Waterloo, he crashed there, and without the crash he might have able to be winning there as well, and now he won here. So I think it's a really well deserved win for Quinten Hermans. I think if we look where Hermans made the difference, it was mainly because he had more power on the climbs and was feeling more confident throughout the corners. I mean, there's not that many technical parts here, but in the downhill he was looking for some grassy lines which really looked to work for him, and I think we saw that Iserbyt didn't really have that. And it's not really strange in my opinion, because we see it time after time again. Iserbyt struggles in mud, and especially in this type of mud today where you really need to tractor yourself through it.
Yeah, I agree on that, but I think that next to the mud, it was also that very long climb that played a big role in a way. I think Toon Aerts and Quinten Hermans for sure were very strong on that climb. Maybe because they are a little bit better climbers, and Iserbyt struggled a lot there, and he was able to get back a little bit every time after that climb on the sections that were less hard in a way and also a little bit easier to ride on. But I think there's every time trying to make up, makes it a little bit difficult. But I think overall, he is not the type of guy that should perform very well on this parcours, and the damage limitation has gone well, also in Waterloo, so I think he should be happy.
But you mentioned the climb, but is that really fair to say for Iserbyt? Because Iserbyt has also won the Koppenberg Cross, which is a lot more climbing.
Yeah, but at least for me, when I saw him go on the climb, it was like he was almost a bit too heavy on his like a gear too heavy or something. It didn't seem that it was going to. It wasn't easy. It looked like he struggled a lot. And if you look at Toon Aerts, for example, alone, it was really like a lot of power coming out of his back. It seemed like it was just a little bit smoother. And with Hermans, the same thing. That was more a climber kind of type, the way he went on that climb. And with Iserbyt, I just really didn't see it. It was kind of, I don't know. Yeah, he is the type of rider that should be climbing well. But I just think that he's better on shorter climbs than longer climbs.
And he couldn't quite find his rhythm right, because you saw him dismounting a few times, I think, on the climb. It's just, I think if it's dry, this climb suits him a lot better. But just because it was muddy and you were really looking for grip and you just have to climb like slightly different than you're used to, it really didn't suit Iserbyt, I think.
I think for Iserbyt, the bigger problem was that he couldn't get a good exit out of the corner at the bottom of the climb. You could see it time after time again, lap after lap, that he was struggling for grip there, having a couple of slips. And I think that is ultimately what cost him, not really his ability to climb, because you saw a couple of times that Toon Aerts distanced Iserbyt on the climb, but then when Iserbyt was on the grassy part, he managed to power back to Aerts. I think the bigger issue was that Iserbyt didn't have the confidence, and maybe this is something that we don't know because we can't really look at the corners in the mud, especially today, but that Iserbyt slides too much. He was talking about it after the race as well. He was sliding around, and I think that was eventually what cost him the, not necessarily the win, but that's what cost him on that climb.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, because indeed we saw that on some of the exits, especially like you said, towards the climb, he was missing out, especially the time that Toon Aerts put him under pressure and then blew up. There as well, he had to really dig deep to get back in the wheel again, and it was like, 2-3 seconds gap. But if you have to close that gap every time again, and it's not only on that section but multiple sections, it's gonna take its toll. But yeah, it's it's a bit of speculation what we're doing, but I still think that overall this is not a parkour, especially in the state it is right now, that Iserbyt should be very good at.
No, I think he can be satisfied with that second place. I also think that Van Toerenhout can be satisfied with that third place. But for Van Toerenhout, he was very unlucky. He had a mechanical issue. There was some kind of net and it went all the way into his cassette and across his pedal as well. So there was really nothing he could do except start running. He lost quite some time. He also got into some controversy around his bike change. He changed his bike just outside of the box and somebody complained about that, but ultimately he didn't get disqualified. But do you guys think that Van Toerenhout could have gotten that second place without that running part?
Yeah, I believe so. I especially the way he came back again, obviously that cost him so much energy that, he blew himself up as well in the last lap. But overall, he was looking very strong, and especially that last lap, the way he came back to Iserbyt kind of showed to me that he was in a good shape, and he was definitely the one guy that should be on second place. But those things happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's part of the sport more in cyclocross than on the road. But well, anyway, I think Van Toerenhout can live with this, and ultimately, I think Paul Sousa will be happy because Iserbyt is looking to be their guy for the overall World Cup classification. And Iserbyt is looking good in that for the time being, although Quinten Hermans did gain back 10 points and is now 5 points behind. Somebody who's falling a bit further behind is Toon Aerts. Another tough day in the office for him.
And really having to limit the damage in the final lap, as he just completely, the lights went out for Toon Aerts, and it was hard for him, still managing to hold on to a fourth place. At the start of the race, he also complained about a little pain he had on his shin. I think he'll just be happy if he gets through what has been a tricky US trip so far, with the least amount of damage, and I think fourth place for him, it's okay, but still things to work on.
Yeah, the injuries he had following that crash in Waterloo weren't too severe, but if I speak from personal experience, I've made some crashes, and not even at high speed, but if you crash, your body it needs time to recover, and recover from that crash means less energy going to recovering from basically the race you did and the tiredness you got from that. So I can see that is a factor that probably played a big role for Toon Aerts, and he was actually lucky that this race was one lap shorter than it should have been, because otherwise he could have fallen back pretty far because he lost a lot of time in that last lap.
Oh yeah, that was actually a good point. The race is only 55 minutes, and World Cup should be an hour plus one lap, I believe.
So... Nah, that rule is a bit old. It got replaced, but it should be as close as possible to 1 hour, but on the other side of the hour.
Okay. Yeah, so still one extra lap, yeah. Yeah, I got lucky there.
Well, that were basically the riders battling for the podium positions. Aerts looked good until that blow up, but we should run down the entire top 10 then. We already had the win of Quinten Hermans in front of Iserbyt Van Toerenhout in 4th place for Toon Aerts. Behind that we find the teammate of Toon Aerts, which is Pim Ronhaar. 6th place for Jens Adam, 7th for Niels van der Putten, another solid showing by him. And then, for the first time in quite a while, we see a name we didn't expect here, a USA flag in the top 10, Gage Hecht in front of Toon van der Bos, who rides a solid race, and in 10th place we find Emil Verstringen. Let's start off by talking about that performance by Pim Ronhaar. 5th place, this is definitely a season best performance.
Yeah, very strong, a very tough course, and keeping the pace throughout the race is just, a very, very good one. And just getting off to a great start to the season as well. Of course, that 6th place in Gieten as well. A bit of a tough start in Waterloo, but here in Fayetteville more than making up for that.
Yeah, he had back problems in Waterloo, which caused him to fall back. Certainly nothing to see of that today. And I think it's good to see this young talented guy get a good result here. The world champion under 23, of course, 3rd year under 23 now. So I'm pretty excited to see what he can do the rest of the season, because this is definitely a solid performance, especially on a hard parkour like this. Another solid result here today by Jens Adams. He got a top 10 in Waterloo, but today he improved a bit. He got 6th this time out. Isam, what do you think about the performance for Jens Adams riding for the Hollebeke Hoeve team?
Yeah, one of the guys that choose to go individual in a way, and he had a tough season last year around, and he's doing very solid, and this is a bit what he should be aiming for going into the further into the next of the races. And overall, I'm very impressed with his sixth place. Not gonna lie, it was a very big group in a way for fifth, and then Ronnar broke away from the pack, and then Adams knew that that it was maybe also time to try and go on his get on his own to get that sixth place. So yeah, I think very good result from Adams, and I hope that he can continue that line, that we can see him more often in the top 10. And I think as well that we're going to see that because he's a very experienced rider.
I do think that Jens Adams is becoming a constant factor in the top 10, at least for the time being. But I still think that this is an outlier, a positive outlier, that this is a very, very good result for him.
Yeah, there was an opportunity today and he took full advantage of it, I think. Jens Adams this season, from what we've seen so far, he's back end of the top 10 kind of guy. So getting so close to top 5 in a World Cup, it's very good. And hopefully he can continue to perform consistently and make a good season out of it.
Somebody who certainly saw an opportunity today as well was Gage Hecht. I mean, what a performance by him. The last time an American ended in the top 10 of a World Cup was in 2015 when Jeremy Powers ended 6th in Cross Vegas. That is 2,219 days ago. That is such a long time ago. Gage Hecht, the American champion, 23 years old, signed for Rally on the Road, and he really took that momentum of signing that deal forward. What a race by him.
Yeah, a surprising result as well, because if you look at the races he's done before this season, he's been good, but he hasn't been that close to winning them, like 2 5th places. When Vincent Bastans is winning, doesn't really scream, I'm gonna come 8th in Fayetteville. But this is very, very good to see, especially with this, of course, being the World Cup, World Championship scores. Exciting times for Gage Hecht, and this will give him maybe that motivation and that confidence that he'll need to make a very good season out of it and an exciting World Championships.
Yeah, he's of course very strong on the road as well, so I think it's no surprise to see him do really good on a harder parkour like this. That's usually where he does good. I watched those races in the USA. Those were completely the opposite of this. Those were fast, flowy, not super technical. Those were more peloton crosses, and this is totally different. So I'm not surprised to see him do good, but I am definitely surprised to see him in the top 10. I was looking, okay, if everything goes well, maybe we'll see him inside the top 20, somewhere around places 15 towards 17. But this definitely topped all my expectations I had for him.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I didn't know him. Like, I'm gonna be very honest here, but I love it when we see other nations get in the top 10, and especially now that we are in the States, it's like it was meant to be to have an American in the top 10 by the men. So yeah, really happy, and good to see that he is able to get himself in the top 10, and I hope this is gonna push him a little bit towards, if he already had the plans to go to Belgium and do the races there as well.
I think he will go to Belgium to race there. If I look at his season 2 seasons ago, last year he skipped cyclocross because of the COVID pandemic. So if we look at his season 2 seasons ago, he did go to Belgium. His best result was a 10th place in the GP Sven Nys in Baal. So I would expect him to come over to Belgium, and I think he would definitely be looking to equal this 8th place at least at the World Championships in Fayetteville later this season. Well, let's also address another impressive performance, or actually 2 impressive performances from 2 Tourmans riders. Emil Verstringen and Thomas Mayne both also did a very good job today.
Yeah, both Tourmans riders finding a course that that really suits them. Thomas Mayne coming back from injury at the back end of the season. Nice to see that he is able to put in a good shift here. And Emil Verstringen just, a very solid performance. 19 years old and already able to get a 10th place on such a tough course in the World Cup. It's quite something, to be honest. And you should be very proud of that one.
Well, there's also a couple of riders that disappointed us today, and by coincidence, they are all Dutch. I would like to start with Lars van der Haar, only ending 14th today. But in his defense, this parcours is really nothing for him. A lot of power climbing as well. It's not really where you expect to see Lars van der Haar, but I would still have expected him to be in the top 10. And then two other Dutch riders, Ryan Kamp and Corné van Kessel, those also disappointed me.
Yeah, as you said, Lars van der Haar, really someone I would at least hope to see in the back end of the top 10. Just salvage some points and move on to the next race. That probably is a bit better for him. Ryan Kamp also finding a course that should, I think, suit him quite well. And it just doesn't quite feel like it's happening for Ryan Kamp this season so far, which is a bit unfortunate. And I think we can say the same for Corné van Kessel. Mr. Consistent, only the level of consistency, it's still there, just the general level has dropped a bit with 3 10th places so far and now 16th. It's I hope there is more of a level to pick up to.
I mean, for Van der Haar, I think all his races so far were in the top 5, and this is like his first race that is outside of the top 10, and it's not a parcours that, it really suits him. So I don't think it's like a disappointment, but obviously I think he could have been in the top 10, but he wasn't far off, so we don't know what really happened in the race. But yeah, 14th is not where you want to be, especially if you're Van der Haar. I think Kamp is missing a little bit the momentum Ron Haar is having at the moment. Ron Haar really, I don't know, came very good in the beginning of the season, is going very well, and Kamp is a bit struggling, sometimes having some good moments, but it's still not there yet. You have to wait and see. Maybe he's planning his season out to be better in December and November. Maybe he learned from last year and is gonna try to be more consistent to the end of the season.
Let's go and talk about the women's race then. Twan, can you give us a summary of that race?
It was a very strong start by Vas and Vos. And unfortunately, Vas would fall away as Brand replaced her. Vos following her very well, looking to be riding a very strong tactical race. In the middle of the race, also taking advantage of a little slip up by Lucinda Brand to put a little bit of the pressure on. But unfortunately for her, it would be she that would sink under the pressure. A very tough final lap for her, as she would even fall off the podium. It was Betsma that was able to put in a very strong final lap to beat Honsinger to second place behind a very, very strong looking Lucinda Brand.
Yeah, let's basically focus on that battle that we saw throughout most of the race, Brand against Vos. First focus on the phase before the Brand crash. Who did you guys reckon was the strongest then?
I thought Brand was the stronger rider, but Vos was just looking to be riding a very strong tactical race again. This time it was a sprint that would have suited Lucinda Brand a bit more, but it was going to be a very interesting one with, I think, Brand having the slight edge of just having more power. But Vos looked very, very good as well. Just very subtle in the way she went up that hill.
Yeah, personally I also thought that Vos looked very good. At the feeling that Brand was a bit overcooking herself, but then ultimately she went down. It looked like a bit too much front brake in a slippery corner. She didn't lose that much time, but after that I really had the feeling Vos was in control. Brand did everything to try and come back, but Vos, even when the gap was down to only 2 or 3 seconds, Vos kept giving her everything, and then, I mean, it really looked like Vos had it in control. The gap went up to around 10 seconds at some point.
Yeah, and then it was gone. And then in a way she kind of lost it, and it was I don't know if it was a puncture or something, but she had to change her bike, and the gap went down completely, and then she had to do it all over again in a way, and I think that kind of broke her maybe a little bit. And then especially the crash, which we couldn't see on the broadcast in the last was it last lap or the lap before? think it was.
It was indeed a puncture and a crash going into the last lap.
Yeah.
Not shown on the Worldcup.
Yeah, it was not shown, but yeah, that doesn't help. And obviously, it's in that descent, and after that descent, you have that long climb. So if you're out of your rhythm and you go on that climb, you're gonna lose a little bit more than only 2 or 3 seconds. So yeah, it didn't help. And then in the end, it was just everything was it was done. There was no energy left, and they came left, right, and center.
Yeah, I think it was really unlucky, but it was also a bit of a mental game. I felt like Brand had the momentum in the beginning, but then after that crash, Vos really had the momentum, and then after the puncture for Vos, the momentum switched again to Brand, ultimately resulting in Vos going down and Brand being able to go for that win. Vos indeed overshot herself on that climb and fell back. That's also the feeling I have, and she even got overtaken by Betsema and Honsinger, who were part of a big group of chasers. We'll come to that after we've run down the entire top 10. It was Lucinda Brand taking the win and the lead in the World Cup in front of Denise Betsema, Clara Honsinger, Marianne Vos, Puk Pietersen, Catablanca Vash, Magali Rochette, Annemarie Worst, Jara Kastelein, and 10th place for Katharina Nash. So let's focus on that big battle. For most of the race it was for third, and ultimately it turned into second with Vos falling back. It was Vash with Pietersen and then Honsinger, Betsema, and for some point Worst and Kastelein as well. Do you have any comments on this battle?
Yeah, it went a little bit up and down, the battle there. I mean, at some point we saw Vas a little bit more in front, then a little bit more at the back. Betsema was having her ups and downs in a way, so it was not really easy to follow. And obviously they were also focusing a little bit more on the two in front. But in a way it was looking that we would see that the Vas and Pietersen and Rochette a little bit that were stronger in the beginning of the race. Struggled a little bit, and then Betsema and Honsinger were just coming very fast, and especially Honsinger, that was a comeback race because she was outside of the top 10, I think, somewhere with Neff, and then she just went one position after the other. At a certain point she was 7th, then you're like, okay, well, maybe top 5, and then she's 5th, and you're like, oh, well, maybe she's gonna get the podium. And she made it stick, and it's amazing for her, a good result.
It's a very good recovery race by Clara Honsinger, but let's face it, she really needs to start improving her starts, because it's not really acceptable that time after time again, last year you could still think, okay, she can learn, she has an entire summer, but even now, after the start, she was like between 18th and 22nd. And then it took her 2 laps before she started moving forward, and then she started lapping the same pace as the leaders, which just shows that if she would have a good start, she could be fighting there for the win.
It's painful to watch someone be so good, yet have something that is so bad that it actually ruins their chance to challenge for races. Because she can podium here, but she has to be so much better in what she does well to actually be able to get there and even to kick on a little bit.
Yeah, I think she could really use some help. Vas is also getting some help in improving her technique. She's now working with Lars Boom. Lars Boom also was with her in the USA. And I don't know if he was there in Waterloo, but I saw they did a track walk together yesterday. And I actually had the feeling that Vas, it looked better the way she went up the stairs, took the corners. There looked to be more thought behind it, looking for the green, looking to find some grip. I did see some improvements, but ultimately I think that Vas just fell short in terms of not necessarily technique today, but just in terms of form.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Vas as well, and I mean, she had a quite busy mountain bike campaign, or she did at least a few mountain bike races, and she was also quite active on the road. I don't know, like, it's maybe that they do it on purpose, and then just somewhere in like 4, 5, 6 weeks they're gonna be like, okay, we're gonna take some weeks off and do a training, go for a training camp in a way, and in the mountains, and then come back. I don't know if that is the plan, but if you're gonna be like this trying to find your form in the coming races is maybe gonna take a little bit too long, and it's maybe never gonna be coming. So I think if she really wants to peak in a way, and I think she still has a lot of kind of potential that can come out of her, not only with the technique but also in terms of shape. I think she has to maybe look in the planning and try something, try to take some rest somewhere in November or maybe in December.
Yeah, perhaps, but I feel like maybe it's a bit early to look at that, and that's for later. I think that for now, Vas, I mean, it's not strange. Don't forget that she's still only under 23. She's done quite some races on mountain bike and road, but she's focusing on cyclocross, at least that's what she said on her Instagram. So I think there's definitely time for her. And I mean, we haven't even mentioned Denise Betsema today, but she also rode a quite anonymous race, in my opinion.
Yeah, and with that final lap, maybe it was just a bit scared of how the pacing was going to work. But she certainly had something left, which made me feel like she was a bit afraid of the course, and that she didn't instantly want to go with Brand and Vos, whilst maybe she could have. Yeah, a second place it's a very good result. Yeah.
Yeah, good result, and definitely keeps her in contention for the overall. There's also a couple of riders who were fairly disappointing. Let's start with the duo Worst-Kastelein. I had expected more of them today.
A course where I would hope to see both of these women actually perform and challenge Brand, but it just didn't happen.
Yeah, very unfortunate. So far, the trip to the USA hasn't been great for Jara Kastelein. Actually, not only the trip to the USA. The last couple of weeks, she has fallen a bit back in terms of performances towards the level where she was last year. But still, don't forget, it's a very packed starting field here, and I think a 9th place isn't that bad, but it could have been better. And then Islam, I mean, we recorded the preview podcast. We have to still actually apologize for not mentioning Honsinger. We actually forgot her. I'm not joking when I say that literally as soon as we stopped recording, within 5 minutes I said, we forgot Honsinger.
Yeah.
And Honsinger could get a podium here.
Yeah, and especially when we also were talking about the rain, and it might be a tough parkour, and with the long climb, there were a lot of attributes in the race that hint towards Honsinger having a good result, but we kind of ignored it all during the podcast. And like you said, it was maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and then you were like, "Oh shit, we forgot, we forgot Honsinger." So it happens sometimes, and but I'm very happy, nevertheless, that she's on the podium, because it's good to see not only Dutch women, but also a little bit more internationalization like we want in the World Cup, right?
Yeah, definitely. But if we then also look in terms of our predictions, we thought that Jolanda Neff would do good. And we saw Neff do good for about a quarter of a lap. And then she disappeared from our screens, fighting for the back end of the top 10 and ultimately ending 12th.
Yeah, we were a little bit wrong there. But I mean, the thing with Neff is, obviously, she had a packed mountain bike season. Her goals were in the Olympics. It just seems that she was just not really having her day, and she's gonna do Iowa, I think, so maybe she can do there something, but it's a very tough race. So I think overall, it is what it is, huh?
Yeah, definitely, and she will still be doing Iowa, so I guess we'll see a bit more of her there. I would like to end off this podcast with an honorable mention for the rider in 10th here. That is Katharina Nash. I think she's the spokesperson of cyclocross within the UCI with the riders, something like that. Anyway, she's 44 years old and gets a 10th place here. Very impressive stuff.
Just David de Rebellin-esque, right? I think she was able to win, what was it, 2 years ago? Because there weren't too many people racing in the US, and now she's with basically everyone competing, she's still able to get a 10th place on 44. It's insane.
It's definitely insane, and indeed 2 years ago she won the World Cup in Waterloo, and now a 10th place in this stacked field. Definitely something she can be happy with. We can be happy that we can stop recording because it's already late for us. Twan and Issam, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me on.
Amazing, thank you, man.
we will be back with a preview for the next round of the World Cup, which is in Iowa a bit later this week, and then of course Iowa to end off the USA to the 3 World Cups there. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will catch you guys later. Goodbye.